Welcome back to the Boys and Bolos. This is a very special episode brought to you without Jeffrey, because Jeffrey is in Disneyland with his Disney World, He's in Florida, otherwise known as Florida. So we have a very special guest today, all the way from the land of Massachusetts, aka Rowley, Massachusetts. It's Guillermo, who is now not Guillermo. He's now back to Diego. We're happy to have him on. Diego, how are things? How's life?
Live from the sticks, live from the Great North, standing in for Jeff while he's having a blast in the House of Mouse.
He's gonna hear this and roll his eye. Well, Jeff, I hope whenever you do hear this, things are going well. Diego said before we started recording, I said, Diego, what do you really want to focus on? And he said he just wanted to focus on the Tottenham game. So I think that's a great place to start, because what we want to do on this episode is talk about week 9, and we're going to preview week 10. Jeff and I weren't able to get an episode up for week 9. If you go on our Instagram, you'll see I did a live with John Shimer. We were talking about the U.S. men's team after the international break, but a look back on week 9, Tottenham, Arsenal. Should we read anything into this? Actually, here's the question. What do you think will happen when Arsenal and Spurs play at home for Spurs? Do you think Spurs can beat them? What are you thinking on that?
Yeah,
game?
I mean, I think Tottenham takes a return match. Probably not as well as Arsenal played this time around. I think once you get to Hotspur Stadium, Arsenal definitely lets off the gas a little bit, or maybe they just get a little too comfortable being at the top of the table right now. And Tottenham probably takes that return fixture. When is that? A couple of weeks down the line?
I think that's actually in the spring after the World Cup. I'm just saying, okay. I guess what I really want to dive into is this something we should read into as far as, is Arsenal that much better than Tottenham right now? Or is that just Arsenal in a good moment and they're at home? Do you think the scoreline's fair? Do you think the scoreline's fair?
I think it is. I think it's fair. I think the card on Emerson was maybe a little harsh. And that definitely, that changed the last, 20 minutes of the game, 30 minutes of the game. So, return fixture of Tottenham at full strength for those last 25, 30 minutes, totally different. So
I think it was a really harsh card too. I was really surprised, and I was really let down that Martinelli just made such a meal of it, because he's on my fantasy team. I don't really want divers on my fantasy team, but he's also kind of a baller. So I guess it is what it is. Anything else surprise you from this week? Anything else that sticks out? I don't want to belabor week 9 too much. To me, there wasn't really anything. I think Liverpool dropping points. Liverpool's your team. Where's Liverpool going to finish right now if you had to put $100 bet on it?
Liverpool is definitely going to finish top 6, but it might be 6th.
You think so?
Yeah. I don't think they're gonna be in the I don't know. It's a tale of two seasons right now, especially with the World Cup break. Right now, Liverpool is not having a great season. Obviously, by their standards for the last 2 years, they're having a rough go of it. But then you look at Champions League, and they're not playing anybody too impressive there, but they're dominating.
It's true. It's true. They are playing well in Europe. I think the biggest thing that stuck out for me, yes, Haaland scoring 1 billion goals. Yes, City are basically unstoppable. The thing that stuck out for me is that if Leicester didn't win this past week and they actually blew out Nottingham Forest, if they don't win and they tie or they lose, they're either on 2 points. And if they lose, then they're on 1 point. And Nottingham Forest has 7 points. So they're 1 point. They're last in the table, and the team ahead of them has 2 full games ahead. So they really needed these points. I thought that was a very big showing. I think I had in my mind, I was thinking it was going to be a tie because they're the 2 teams in the basement. So I was happy to see Leicester to do that. I think Leicester has a lot of talent. And you've been saying for a while that Maddison still is a guy who kind of really hasn't stretched his legs, I guess you could say, this season so far. And if I go over to the Boys and Bolos Instagram, I put up something today about Maddison, and I'm going to bring it up right now, but he's definitely, I think, pound for pound, their most important player. And the thing was on Footy Emporium, it's in our stories. It says No English midfielder has more goal involvements than James Maddison since the start of the season. The stats speak for themselves. There are no ifs, buts, or maybes. James Maddison should be in the England World Cup squad next month. Do you think he makes that squad?
Unfortunately, I don't think he's going to break into the squad. I think he should. I mean, in addition to his goal involvement, I think Haaland is by and far, obviously, he's at 14 goals. So there's no touching him. But Maddison's at 5, I think. So he's only 2 behind Kane, with a 1, 2, 3, 4, like 6-way tie for 4th. So Maddison is contributing. He's contributing goals, and he's contributing obviously a lot of goal scoring opportunities and creating chances. Unfortunately, I don't think he makes the England squad. As we know, Southgate makes some pretty interesting decisions, and unfortunately, I think he just doesn't make the cut by 1 or 2 players.
Yeah, I don't think he makes it either, and I'm glad we're kind of agreeing on that, because I think that Gary likes to play with 3 backs, wing backs, 2 holders, and then 3 up top. And he doesn't play with a 10. And James Maddison isn't a forward player, and he's not a holder. So he literally just doesn't fit in their plan. If he were to go with a 10, then yeah, I think maybe he would get in. But even then, I think Grealish could drop in. Kane could do a false 9. So I think it's really quite tough. That's week 9. Let's talk about Champions League super briefly, because we had Champions League go on today. Yep. And the things that are happening in Champions League is we're starting to see that there are groups of death. So when you look at the table, what is the group that you think is going to be the juiciest over the last 3 games that they have left to play? I would say it's probably, actually, I don't know. What do you think? I think the Chelsea group is getting pretty crazy, actually.
Chelsea group is getting interesting. Group C, Bayern, Inter, Barca, and I'll butcher the name. Plen?
Yeah, Victoria Pleasant. I'm not sure, but that group, who do you think goes top 2?
Bayern is definitely going 1, and then Inter and Barca. I mean, they have everything to play for right now. Barca is looking like they're going to be in Europa again next year, and it's disappointing. But I don't know. They're playing great in La Liga. Xavi's really turning things around for them. I think up until today they had 14 straight away wins or something. And they just dropped it. They dropped it to Inter yesterday. Kind of a interesting, hotly contested match with potential handballs here and there. It is what it is. But Barcelona is definitely going to struggle to finish top 2 in that group. And I think you're right. The Chelsea, Milan, Salzburg, Dinamo Zagreb group is tough. I mean, Salzburg in first with 5, Dinamo in 4th with 3. So there's nothing. There's a tie and a win separating those 4 teams.
Yeah, the Group D and Group E are, I think, going to be tight, because Group D, you got Sporting with 6, Tottenham with 4, Eintracht with 4, and Marseille with 3. And so they all have a win, which is good, meaning that it's, they're all being competitive. Yep. Anyone could still finish first. Anyone could still finish last with the last 3 games, which is still crazy. Same thing in Group E. So in Group D, from the top to the last, you have 3 points separating them. And in Group E, you have 2 points, because Salzburg's on 5, Chelsea's on 4, Milan's on 4, and Zagreb is on 3. Those are just going to come down to the wire. Yeah. The groups that are kind of dead, Group G is dead for me. Sevilla and Copenhagen, they're going to just fight out whoever I think is going to go to Europa. I don't see Sevilla coming back. And then Maccabi Haifa is done, and we'll see if you, Maccabi Pfeiffer. We'll see who can get into the Europa from that. I don't know if Juve can do it, to be honest, because I think that PSG and Benfica are going to continue to take points. What do you think? Who do you think goes out of Group E and D? You want to start with Group D? Who's going out? Who's going to Europa, and who's going on?
Group D, I think that's a tough one. I think Tottenham goes through. And honestly, I think Sporting holds on. I'm not sure who they play in their next couple of match weeks, but I kind of think it stays as it looks right now. And the only thing separating Tottenham and Frankfurt is goal differential. But I think Sporting and Tottenham go through on D. Group E is tough. I know Chelsea's your team, but they've been in rough shape on all fronts. Aubameyang is a little bit of a spark for them,
which is bad. When Aubameyang's your spark, that is super rough. He hasn't played top flight football for me well in 2 or 3 seasons. So when he's the guy who's scoring goals for you in the league and in the Champs League, it's not good. It really shows the hole that Lukaku created last season and then into this season, letting go of, I guess that was last season, Giroud, Tommy Abraham. Like we don't have a 9. Havertz was never going to be a 9. He was honestly a 10 when he was in Germany. So I agree with you. I actually think Salzburg and Milan are going to continue to be, even though Chelsea beat Milan today pretty handily. We go the next game next week, we play back in Milan. So I think it would be great if we got those 3 points and then we'll be on 7. I do think Salzburg beats Zagreb, so they'll be on 8 and 7. Then Zagreb really starts to only be able to challenge for Europa League. But I do believe that Milan can still cause problems. And the other thing is we're going to play these games next week. And then I don't think we're going to play another Champions League game until February. But maybe I'm wrong. I have to look that up. I think that they don't play, or do they play knockout games in February? I'd have to look that up.
They play group stage up through November 2nd or 3rd. And then group, let's see.
So there's 3 more games for each group. I know they play next week, so that will be week 4. And even though Chelsea still has to make a couple games because never mind. Yeah. So we'll play group 4. All teams will play stage 4 next week. And then you'll still have 2 left. Are those played in the fall or the spring? If you have it up, you could look.
Yeah. The round of 16 is 2nd week of February.
So they're going to get all the Champs League done before the World Cup is my point, I guess.
All the Champs League group round.
Yeah. We're going to know.
So February, late February, early March, you've got the round of 16, and then everything else kind of plays out the way it usually does.
Right. So it's going to be tough because there's so many games to be played before the World Cup. I think I saw a stat. We're only like 5 or 6 weeks away from the World Cup, but you have all these European games that need to be played. There's FA Cup games that need to be played. There's a bunch of league games that need to be played now without the Christmas season kind of being taken out. So I'm hoping that there aren't as many injuries as I think that there might be. Today, Fofana scored a goal for Chelsea and then kind of pulled up lame. And I'm interested to see how that continues to play out because I do think it's going to start to affect teams and honestly what, you're going to get to see what teams have depth and what teams don't. And it's going to unfortunately hurt the weaker teams.
Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of going back to what I said earlier with Liverpool, not just in the Prem, but in Champs League, it's going to be a tale of 2 seasons big time because obviously in Champs League, you have so many players on those teams that are going to the World Cup. And I mean, that month is going to be somewhat taxing for them. I mean, maybe not any more than their usual season, but it could be a lot of injuries. It could be guys just coming back exhausted, coming back from that break. So you could see totally different teams in the round of 16 than what you saw in the qualifying round.
In the Champs League.
Yeah, Champs League. I mean, in the Prem too. I think I mentioned this to you and Jeff the other day when we were talking, but this season in particular, Haaland, it's great for him because, Jeff always talks about his injury-prone seasons that he's had in the past, and he gets a month off with nothing to do. He's just going to completely recover. He could pull up with a strained hammy next week or in 2 weeks, and then he'll come back in January as fresh as can be.
I actually wonder if, I think you were the one who said this, but this is like a conspiracy theory. I want it back, but like he could totally hurt himself, do his hamstring in, do something in, do a quad, do a groin, perfectly aligning, miss a week or 2. And then the World Cup happens. And it's not just 3 to 4 weeks for the World Cup. They probably get 2 weeks on the front end and a week and a half on the back end. So it's going to be a significant amount of time that if you're not going to the World Cup, you're going to have off. So that's going to definitely affect things. Who right now, if you had to put, once again, I ask you again, if you had to put $100 on it, who do you think wins the Champions League, or lay out who you think the final is going to be? And we don't know the draw. We know nothing about what the round of 16 is going to look like. But if you had to pick two teams right now, who are the teams you're picking?
Two teams. Oof. I'll give you a top three, and in no particular order right now, or maybe in a particular order. Real Madrid repeating, Man City finally winning, and PSG. The way Messi is playing right now, and him and Neymar, and for the most part Mbappe are actually meshing right now. They have a real shot. Man City, obviously, Haaland is a freak, and they can achieve anything right now. If you put them up against Real Madrid right now, I think they would beat them in a one-off. So probably those are my top three. But which one would I put above the other? I don't know right now.
I think right now you're totally right. City beats Real Madrid, and that's the funny thing about Real Madrid. Last year, Real Madrid started off Champions League they weren't convincing, even though they were winning. And then in the league, they weren't convincing either. And then they end up winning the double. So Real Madrid just maybe need a little bit of time to get going. Man City's unbelievably freakish. I don't even know what to say about them, but I also think that they're just going to somehow blow it because they always have. Bayern Munich would be the only other one I'd put up there to accompany those two. And then PSG, I'm so happy that Messi's at PSG because I think he's going to be well rested before the World Cup. And he's already in PSG starting to play in that 10. And that's where he always plays for Argentina. They always put him in the 10, and he was so used to being a forward, and then he'd come back and have to be in a 10. And it's just a different look. I watched today the PSG match, and while they tied, he had some balls out of the middle that were just there's only a couple people on the planet that can pass like he does. And even at 35, he still looks like one of the best players on the planet. So I'm interested to see, what obviously the World Cup is coming, and that's going to be interesting. Well, let's go ahead. Let's look at week 10 in the Prem. I feel so removed from the Prem because last week I wasn't able to watch as many games as I wanted to. And I'm excited to sit down this weekend. And I think I have a little bit more time. Let's go through Bournemouth, Leicester. I don't really want to cover because they're both such deadbeats. Newcastle United and Brentford. Do you want to talk about this game? Let's see. Brentford's pretty high up. Newcastle is being competitive. Where is Newcastle in the state? Yeah, let's talk about these two teams. They're both in the top 10. Newcastle is just right behind Manchester United and Chelsea, even though those two teams have a game in hand. This game is going to be played at I lost my spot here.
At St. James Park.
At St. James Park. Who do you got on this?
I think Newcastle. Newcastle has been, playing really well. If Isaac is healthy, I know you and I talked about that last week. If he's healthy, he's been playing incredibly well for them. And Brentford, Brentford's Brentford. I don't think they're going to go to Newcastle. I don't think they're going to go to St. James and take this one from them. Might be a close game, but maybe we see a little Trippier free kick magic again this week. Yeah, I think they definitely hold it down at home.
I agree. I think Newcastle at home. The thing about Newcastle is they're like a snowball going downhill. They've changed out a lot of players in the last 18 to 24 months. They got new ownership. They just look like a team reborn, and they're actually looking super competitive. And it's scary because I can see how in 2 or 3 seasons they're going to be challenging for top 6. And I know that sounds ridiculous, and there's a lot of power up there, but they have the money. And so money eventually talks and eventually shines out. We're seeing that right now with City, because when I started watching the Premier League, City would maybe crack the top 6, maybe. And now they're basically a lock, and they've turned the Premier League into a farmers league. So I do think Newcastle win at home. Chelsea, Wolves, Manchester City, Southampton. I don't even want to talk about the Wolves game because somehow Wolves always cause us a lot of problems. I want to talk about the Brighton Tottenham game. And I'm sure Jeff will love that he can't talk about this, but Brighton right now, and this is unbelievable, is in 4th after playing 7 games, and Tottenham is in 8th. So Brighton actually have a game in hand. This game is going to be at Amex. So Tottenham are going to be on the road. Does Brighton win this? Because they're at home and they're close and it's close enough. Or they've just lost Graham Potter. They've lost Cucurella. They've lost some things. They're in a transition. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's tough for Brighton to beat Tottenham this weekend, even if they are at home. I think Kane's playing well. Sonny's playing really well after that international break. Kulusevski, I believe, is still out, but I mean they've got enough talent that they're holding their own just fine. And I think they go to Brighton and maybe win by a goal. I think Brighton's definitely going to give them a game, but I don't think Tottenham's going to run away with it for sure.
Okay, so kind of like a smash and grab. Kane gets a tap in. Sonny gets a goal. Kulusevski got a goal. Højbjerg's been scoring goals, but you think Tottenham's going to get it? Not the prettiest game, but they're going to take 3 points and go back to London.
Yeah, and they just, they're coming off that Arsenal loss. That one stings a bit, and they've got to pull it together. They can't drop one at Brighton.
Yeah, I agree. Let's look at Sunday. Crystal Palace Leeds. We're only going to talk about Leeds just because apparently it's America's team and patriotism. Is there any way they lose? Crystal Palace is looking bad.
It's a tough one. This one might be a tie, to be honest with you. At least that's the way I'm looking at it. I don't know. It could go either way for me.
I think it's a tie, but I think because it is at Selhurst, I don't know. I'm so scared of Crystal Palace at Selhurst. I mean, we only beat Crystal Palace at Selhurst because of Conor Gallagher basically wonder goal. We should have tied that game. So Crystal Palace could easily win this. Not easily, but they could win this, and it'd be annoying. I'd rather see Leeds, America's team, that love having dad jeans on the touchline. West Ham, Fulham. This is going to be a London affair. Fulham is playing very well, kind of on the coattails of Mitrovic right now, and I think Carvalho's been playing well as we talked about. Fulham, West Ham. West Ham has been playing not that well this season. They picked it up more. They've been climbing the table. This is actually a game. I think that this is a tie. I think that they're both kind of just going to be competitive, but it is at West Ham. Do you think Fulham can get a point there?
No, yeah, just the point though. I don't think either one of them are walking away with the full 3. Neither one. Fulham is playing well, but they're not impressing. They're not like a Brighton or like a Newcastle right now, that they're putting up a lot of points and staying at the top of the table. Fulham's in 8th, I think, 8th or 9th.
Fulham's in 8th. Yeah, they're tied on points with Newcastle. They're just behind. Fulham is actually, if you look at it, Fulham has -2 goal differential. And in the top 10, there's only 2 teams that have negative goal differential. One of them's Fulham with -2. The other one's Manchester United with -3. So these are teams that are just having these off games where they're scoring a bunch of goals, but on the whole, they're in the negative. They're in the minus because their defenses really just haven't, gotten where they are. And obviously United's thrown off a little bit because they've had some big losses. So
well, yeah, that derby last weekend didn't help big time.
That was it. Yeah, that'll do it. So there's 2 more games on Sunday, and I just want to call it Monday. There's Nottingham Forest and Aston Villa. I don't really want to look at this. Nottingham Forest is essentially relegated, so I think whoever they play for the rest of the season, we're probably not going to have too much talk about it. But the last 2 games are probably the games of the week, I would say. I think Brighton and Tottenham's another really good game. I think Newcastle Brentford's going to be competitive, but the last 2 games, I want to first talk about Everton, Manchester United, and then get into Arsenal, Liverpool, because I think that's going to be a Premier League, the premier game of Sunday. Everton, Manchester United. Manchester United have found form. They put Martinez in the back. Basically, Harry Kane, when he's not in the field, they're going to be better off. But they've also been benching a goat, so I think it's a very weird situation. Everton have been playing better, but I still feel like when they're away from Goodison, they don't seem very strong. Do you think there's a way that Everton beat United this week? They are at Goodison, and like I said, at Goodison, I just hate playing them.
Yeah. Again, not a win for either one. I think that much. It's either going to be a 2-1 win for Everton, or it could be a tie. I mean, Man U's won 4 out of the last 5, and obviously they went up against a juggernaut with Man City. So I don't know. They've definitely been playing better. The Ten Hag experiment is working. It's definitely not. He hasn't completely figured it out, but he's moving in the right direction. Everton's not an easy team to play at home, and they've won their last two. I don't know if they've been home games or home and away, but I see Everton giving Manchester a pretty good game on this one.
I think there's going to be a red card. I just think neither defense is really that great. And I actually think Everton are going to end up with a red card in this game. That's my prediction. It's a weird prediction, but I think you're right. 2-1 Everton, or maybe like a 2-2 or a 1-1 tie. And I think United would be okay with that because, once again, Goodison isn't the most comfortable place. And then finally, the last game this week, your team versus Arsenal. Arsenal are top of the table. Liverpool, you've just said you think are going to end up maybe sixth this year due to their current form. Nunez, is he ever going to play well? I'm not sure. Jeff definitely should have taken that bet with Scheimer. Scheimer literally texted me today. He's like, I'm really glad I didn't take that bet with Jeff, because there's no way Nunez cracks 10 goals by Christmas at this point, unless he, has a couple wonder games. What does Liverpool in this game need to do to be competitive? Because they're at the Emirates, and right now playing Arsenal at the Emirates is a death wish.
Yeah, it's gonna be a tough Sunday for Liverpool, I think. Arsenal's playing really well. I don't think they're dealing with any injuries, so they're going to be able to put out a pretty strong squad for this. And Liverpool, I believe, still has a couple of guys injured. Thiago's back. Thiago's been playing a lot better. He didn't look his best in the Champions League game, but by his standards, that's still pretty good. Diaz, Jota, they played great. And then Nunez had a lot of looks. I don't believe he scored. They came from Trent, and who was the other goal? I forget who scored the second goal for Liverpool this week. But it's tough. It's tough for them to go to the Emirates and take points from Arsenal. It might be a close game, but I think Arsenal still takes 3 points away. Midweek in the Champions League, Trent obviously looked better with his free kick. His defending was classic Trent. Nothing too impressive. But Van Dijk and Joel Matip, they were playing really well, a lot better than they have been. And Van Dijk's been taking a lot of flack. That whole defense has, and for good reason, because they've been pretty poor. So I think Arsenal comes away with a win, but it might be a 3-2 affair. I think it'll be a high scoring one.
3-2 affair, though, with Arsenal winning.
Yeah, I don't think Liverpool takes points from them at the Emirates.
I would really love Liverpool to take points, but it's like an energy thing. I just don't think Arsenal are going to drop points at home. They've been getting kind of lucky bounces here or there. And honestly, they've been like creating their own luck. I think that they've been really on the forefront and on the forefoot. And I'm trying to find this thing that I put up on Instagram because I thought it was absolutely ridiculous, and I'm not finding it, but it was somebody saying, and I just wanted to see who the quote was, because I kind of remember the gist of the quote, but I wanted to give it to the person who said it. And it said something like, Trent Alexander is one of the best defenders, or if he keeps working, he'll be one of the best defenders of EPL history. And I'm like running through my head.
It was Neville.
What was it? Oh, was it Gary Neville? Because I just think he's so far off.
Gary Neville, he said, if Trent does these 4 basic things, and the 4 basic things were, the basics of defending: square up your body, track back. He was saying things like that. He said, if Trent learns how to do these 4 basic things, he could be the best right back that the world has ever produced. And that's definitely a bit generous. He was saying he could be Cafu level. That's definitely no. That's not even close. Cafu was one of the greats, if not the greatest. Right now I would even put Dani Alves above Trent still. I know Trent's young. He's scoring a lot of goals. He's played in a lot of competitions, but I don't think he deserves all the praise he's gotten early in his career. Maybe some of it because he is a young player. And as an attacking fullback, he's incredible. But the kid can't defend to save his life.
Yeah, because even though Ashley Cole's a left back, I would have said he's way better than Trent. I would even put Reece James above him. And I think that this is going to be a weird thing where I do think that Reece James should play, but Gary Southgate does his own. He has his own vibes. So we'll see. Because I do think he's going to choose Trent over Reece, which I think is ridiculous. I think Reece is in great form. But yeah, that quote, and thank you for remembering it because I think it's ridiculous. And I think it's a hard sell because he's been sitting on the bench for England. He hasn't been playing. He's not a defender. He's a guy who probably should be a wing back at best. He can't have any defensive responsibilities. But that's week 10. Let's go look at the best thing and the reason why you're here, your favorite thing, the over-analysis of fantasy.
Oh, boy.
First of all, I want to give a shout out to Molly with Tater Tottenham because she's out of the basement. And actually, so is Low-Key Chahone. He also got out. I don't even know how that's possible. Molly's gone from 22 all the way up to 17, and she missed a week. So people beware. Molly is on the move. She's moving up. I think this is her first time probably in Premier League fantasy world, and she's doing well. Talk to me about what you're thinking for this week. Who are you starting? Who are you not? I'm gonna open up your team once again. You won the best name this year with Haaland Oates. Everyone basically in the top 15 I looked, except for like one person, has Haaland, and they're just captaining them, and that's how it should be.
Yeah.
Are you going to make any changes though?
Let's see. I've got Pope going against Brentford. I'm pretty comfortable with that. Cancelo, Trippier, Reece James, and I picked up Trossard. Who did I drop for him? Bernardo, maybe. Or I forget, somebody that didn't produce this past week.
Did you drop Odegaard? Because you had Odegaard in week 9.
No, I have Odegaard benched.
Which I think is crazy. You have such a solid team that you can bench. If you look at Diego's bench, it's ridiculous. Sanchez is a pretty good goalie. Nico Williams isn't the worst. I mean, as far as like having like a low budget defender, just so you can get higher pieces up closer up who can score. Odegaard, and you have Rashford. Rashford, how much is Rashford worth? Let me look at Rashford.
Well, okay, so that's what it is. I dropped Rashford for Trossard, and I benched Diaz this week. Like I said, I think Liverpool is going to have a bit of a, maybe not a rough go, but I don't think they're going to do as well as I'd like them to at the Emirates. So, yeah, on my bench I have Sanchez, Williams, Odegaard, and Luis Diaz.
Okay, all right.
Starting across the front, I have Jesus, Haaland, and Tony. And then in the midfield, Trossard, Madison, Martinelli.
A lot of people, your front three is the exact same front three that I have with, actually, I dropped Mitrovic and I picked up Jesus. So week 9, I had Mitrovic, but now I picked up, so I have Haaland, Tony, and Jesus. So a lot of the teams are honestly starting to look very, very similar at this point. And so it really comes down to how you use your bench boost, how you use your triple captain, and who you vice captain. Because basically the top 12, everyone's just captaining Haaland. So I'm looking at No Mane, Mo Problems, Will Hayden. He's in first. He's going to 3-4-3. You guys have very, very similar players, but he has Son in the middle, and that could make a difference.
Yeah, Sonny, I looked at Sonny. Unfortunately, I just couldn't afford him. But he's playing a lot better. I think Tottenham has a relatively easy schedule for the next couple of weeks. You have to captain Haaland. You have to. And for the lucky people, I think they said it was 20,000 people that triple captained him this past weekend. I mean, they churned out 150 points and automatically shot them up to the top of whatever league they're playing in. So the guy's a freak. Everybody's going to say, oh, he's playing Southampton this weekend, I should triple captain him. What's the likelihood that he's going to have 4 hat tricks in a row? It's possible. I mean,
apparently it's possible because he's on pace to score 1 billion goals. And I think the ridiculous thing is actually, I think you sent image, or who sent an image? No, I guess that was Nodder in the other football chat. But let's look at Haaland's goal totals for his other teams, because Jeff was saying, oh, well, it's because he's on $1 billion team. And Nodder and I were basically like, yeah, okay, he's on $1 billion team. You're not wrong. No one's arguing that. But when he was in the Bundesliga, he had 67 appearances and 62 goals. When he was in the UCL, he's had 13 appearances and 15 goals. I don't think that takes into account today. Mm-hmm. In the German Super Cup, 2 appearances and 1 goal. So his total appearances, and it also had the DFB Pokal, which is another German competition. So appearances 89 and goals 86. Now I think he scored for City 14 already. So that is my math, 100.
15. He's on 15.
So that's 101, and he scored 2 today. So he's on 103 goals. Now, to give you guys some perspective, how good Ronaldo and Messi are, they both cracked 800. So that means Haaland needs 700 more goals. Haaland will probably play, injuries and counting, maybe 15 more years. So if you take 700 goals and you divide it by 15, he's scoring 46 goals a season, because that's basically what Ronaldo and Messi have done. And I'd be impressed if Haaland even cracks 46 this year. So that's both to give you perspective on how great Messi and Ronaldo are, but also to show how ridiculous Haaland has been. Because his appearance to goals, I think he's probably the best for any European club player, maybe in history, in their first 100 games.
All competitions, he's what, 19, 20 right now, 21?
I think he's 20, 21.
20, 21 goals for this season. What was that year for Messi? 91?
He had 91 in 2012, I believe, was the year.
That's absurd.
All competitions.
The idea that somebody could score another 71 goals from here on out. Haaland, I don't think he'll do it. If somebody could, it might be him, but I mean, that year's untouchable.
I think what happens too is that's Messi at Barcelona 2012. They're really dominant. They lose in the Champions League to Chelsea in that spring, but it counts. I think it was just the calendar year of 2012. So it's the spring of 2012 and the fall of 2012 for Barcelona. And then that summer, I think he was scoring goals also with Argentina. So there was a bunch of goals. He was in Copa del Rey. He was dominant. He was in La Liga. He was dominant. He was in Champions League. He was super dominant. And with Argentina, he was still pumping out goals. Haaland also scores a shit ton of goals for Norway. So if anyone ever beats 91, it will obviously be hats off. And I think it's a guy like Haaland, or it's a guy like Mbappe, more so Haaland maybe, but it's truly unbelievable. But going back to fantasy, you are currently with 460 and 11th. You know, are you gonna make any weird, like, here's the question. The top 12 in the fantasy all have Haaland and they're captaining him. Only until you get to Here Comes the Sun with Nick Turns do you get to somebody that doesn't even have Haaland. When does somebody in the top 12, and I don't even know if this is going to happen, when do they gamble and not captain Haaland and go captain somebody else and like triple it just to see what happens? I think it's a huge gamble, because if you mess up and Haaland scores a hat trick, you're going to be knocked out for weeks, I think.
Yeah, you got to take somebody like a Kane or a Jesus. I'm trying to think of somebody else, maybe a Mitrovic, and captain him when they're playing a bottom 3 team at home or something like that. That's the only time you can really take a gamble like that. Otherwise, you're right. If you don't captain Haaland, you're just shooting yourself in the foot, and you're automatically probably dropping at least 2 or 3 places.
Yeah, because everyone's basically like, in the last week, Jamie Becker had the most points and he's in 9th. And that's just because he had Madison. And he had James Madison. You had James Madison too, but whatever, the way his point total, and he had De Bruyne on a vice captain. And he had Trippier in the back. You guys have actually a very similar team. How many points did you have this past week? You had
93 or 94, I think.
Yeah, you had 94. So you were right behind him. So you and Jamie Becker have a very similar kind of outlook. The bottom line is this is going to be really competitive. Oz is getting close to the top people, though, so everyone needs to get their shit in order. I'm glad Molly is back, and she's moved out of the basement, and she's in front of Eric Chahon. Eric, if she finishes higher than you and you actually listen to the pod, you will buy her dinner and take her out for a day of fun, should she finish ahead of you, because she had a week behind you, and this is her first time ever playing fantasy. So I think that's only fair.
He's got to take both of us out, not just her.
For sure. When you say both of us, you mean
all 3 of everybody.
Us.
You too.
All 3 of us and Jeff.
And Jeff. All 4
and Jeff. Well, I think that's it. And maybe we'll get together for a game this week. Normally I go just hang out on Jeff's couch with all of his kids, but they're going to still be down in Florida. So maybe we'll get together for a game this week and See what happens in Week 10.
Maybe that Liverpool game.
Yeah, that's Sunday 11:30. I think that sounds just right. Yeah, if you want to do that.
I'm down.
Well, thanks, Diego, for hopping on Boys and Bolos, and ciao.
Ciao.
Thanks for listening to the Boys and Bolos podcast. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Patreon, Twitch at Boys and Bolos.
If you'd like to be a guest, please reach out. You can hit us on any of the social media accounts that Jeff just mentioned, or email us directly at boysandbolos@gmail.com.
Thanks for listening, and see you next time.